Hello friends, I am Jonathan Pishner with Apex Counseling, and today we're going to kick off a series of videos we're going to do on the types of thinking that create people's depression, anxiety, and other difficulties. So a video or two ago we talked about the idea that our emotions come from only a couple of places. Primarily, events don't cause our emotions, that a large portion of our emotional response comes from our thoughts. Now, we spoke a little bit about how behaviors affect that, but I'm going to spend a lot of time now discussing how thoughts create emotions and some of the common ways that look, and how you can apply this to your own life. So there's kind of a lot of common ones that people experience, and the one I wanted to talk about today is the belief that many people hold that they've got to be completely competent or adequate or achieving in all possible respects in order to be a worthwhile person. And this is one that is like trickier to work with sometimes, because on the surface we know that we cannot be good at everything. We can't be achieving in everything. If I was to administer that quiz and say, like, hey, can you be good at everything? Pretty much everybody would say, well, of course not. No, you can't. But this is a type of thinking that often ends up kind of like covert. You've got to kind of dig to realize that you're telling yourself this. Because a lot of times I'll work with people and, they'll know consciously the answer of like, oh, well, of course you can't be good at everything. But then we'll find out this, like, okay, there's this job area where I'm not doing really well at, and I'm telling myself how much I suck because of that. But, I'm a nurse and they're making me do spreadsheets. I don't know the first thing about spreadsheets. What the person oftentimes tells themselves is like, well, I should know how to do this, even though they've never been trained in anything to do with that. The nurse and spreadsheet example is one that happens, unfortunately, very commonly. A lot of healthcare professionals end up feeling bad and feeling like they're bad at their job because they were trained to provide patient care, and then they find themselves stuck in all these weird secondary roles that you receive at best, a 30-minute training video from your employer on, which does not prepare you. So one of the things that happens is they tell themselves how bad they are at their job, and that's kind of reinforced by maybe even the employers telling them that too, when in reality, they're basically telling themselves they should be good at a thing that they have no reason to be good at, that they have no way of ever having achieved in. And that's a terrific example. If you've ever worked with Excel, that's not an intuitive program. Like, you've got to kind of work and read tutorials and get training and watch videos and spend a lot of time even be mildly proficient at that particular skill. And you'll find this everywhere. You'll find somebody who is really great at, I don't know, let's say their job, but maybe they're not doing particularly well as a parent. Now, the script they're telling themselves is, how I should be an amazing mother, I should be an amazing father, or at least be good at it, be adequate at it. When in reality, when do you ever get trained in that? Like, I mean, it's not like there's a book they pass out. There's not a class you go to like, oh, look, I see you're pregnant. Please take this 14-week intensive course on how to be a parent. And even that wouldn't be long enough. So it's very easy to make up this idea that you are supposed to be good at a thing that you have no reason to be good at. And unfortunately, this is a thing we don't talk about much in our society. Like there are all these areas where people just randomly assume they're supposed to be good at something. Like, just to name a few off the top of my head: parenting, love relationships, school. People assume you're supposed to be good at school, but that you either have a talent for it or you figure out how to be good at it. And if you don't happen to do one of those things, you're not going to be good at it. It's not like people teach you how to do school. They just stick you in the environment and, act like, well, sink or swim, stupid. You're getting Fs. You shouldn't be getting Fs. But test taking and studying and all of that is a set of skills. Well, if you don't know it and your parents don't know how to teach it to you, the teachers don't take the time to teach it to you, how are you supposed to know it? So people make up that they're supposed to be good at school. They make up that they're supposed to be good with their finances. I spend all of my money at the end of the month. Why can't I ever get anywhere? Oh my gosh, I suck. When were you ever trained? Who taught you? Who ever taught you how to spend money? But see, this is how this thought kind of embeds itself. Is we make up that we're supposed to be good at a thing, when in reality we have no reason we should be good at the thing. Like, I should be good at counseling because I went and spent 4 years, then 2 years, and then like a long internship and a supervision period to be good at counseling. Like, I was trained, so it would make sense for me to make up like that I should be good at counseling. Just like it would make sense for a lawyer to make up that they should be good at law because they did at least 3 years worth of law school, and then I don't know what other training they get after that, but I assume there's probably some training and mentorship and stuff like that. But all of these other areas we're never trained in. We just assume we're supposed to be good at it. So that's one way that you can be destructive to your thinking. So if I was going to suggest to somebody, some easy ways to just try and shift their thinking, one of the things that I would absolutely encourage them to think about is, if you're beating yourself up for not being good at something, do you actually have any reason to be good at it? Were you taught? If the answer is no, reminding yourself that, well, okay, you were never taught to do this. You're just figuring it out as you go. Did you have a role model? Did you have an example? If your example for love relationships was your parents, but they had a crappy relationship, how are you supposed to know how to do good love relationships? You didn't have a role model. Finances, school, all of these things. So if you're beating yourself up, at least ask yourself, is there a reason you should actually know how to do this skill? And if not, remind yourself, I just didn't get taught. It's okay for me to struggle because I don't know what I'm doing. I'm figuring it out. Reminding yourself of the more true thing instead of just beating yourself with how you should be good at this, despite the fact you have no training, no guidance, no anything. Because that will always lead to frustration with yourself. That'll lead to sadness. It'll lead to anxiety. You'll tell yourself how, oh my gosh, I've got to get this figured out. And then a second thing, a lot of times it's really useful to remind yourself of is, in most of these cases, it's really not that difficult to avoid the real catastrophes. Finances. Everybody knows you shouldn't go into debt or go at least very far into debt, or you should do certain types of debt. Like, kind of everybody has that. And if you don't, then look up a YouTube video about how to not go into debt. But or parenting. Everybody kind of has an idea that you shouldn't beat your children. The jury's kind of out on spanking or like light corporal punishment, but people know to not beat their children. They know not to like starve them. The really catastrophic stuff, it's not that hard to avoid. So remind yourself, like, how to avoid the major catastrophes. So if you're not particularly great at something, if you're just kind of mediocre at it, it's okay that you're mediocre at it. You can survive those difficulties. Back to our very first example, the nurse, and they got to do paperwork and spreadsheets and all that nonsense. If you're a terrific nurse and you just are not very good at your paperwork, most of the time you can get guidance and you can at least survive long enough to figure it out. Like, they're probably not going to fire you for the first error. And as soon as I say that, of course, somebody's going to be like, well, hey, I got fired for that. Well, in general, of course, we have to speak in generalities, but reminding yourself that there's not going to be a major catastrophe. So the thought that everybody struggles with, I should be thoroughly competent, adequate, and achieving in all respects. The thing to do to remind yourself you didn't get trained in this, and that you're probably going to avoid the major catastrophes. So hopefully this idea is helpful out there to somebody. We'll continue our series on what kinds of thinking are destructive to people's mindsets. So thank you for hanging out with me for a little bit today. I'm Jonathan Pishner with Apex Counseling, and I will see you next time.